The collapse of the US dollar has already happened, it just hasn't unraveled yet. The erosion was compounded in 1971 when Nixon took the US off the gold standard. It was accelerated in 2008 by the housing market crash and the US's response to the private banks basically giving them free rein to save the economy, and fractional reserve banking basically giving people the opportunity to print money from thin air. We reached a point of no return during the pandemic where governments around the world copied the Federal Reserve's lead by basically creating money to stimulate the economy or keep people from going bankrupt. A further thorn in the side of the dollar was Bitcoin, which was created back in 2008. Although like everything this started off as a small idea, it really highlights the cracks and the loss of faith in the dollar and lays the foundation for a technological revolution. People beginning to get fed up with the governments creating monetary policies that directly affect their wealth and look for a more decentralised, fair way for a payment system. Fast forward to 2022 and we have a war between Russia and Ukraine, and the answer from the G20 and specifically the US was to cut Russia from the current economic system by cutting them out of SWIFT, which is a global interbank messaging system. This actually led to a strengthening of the Russian ruble by about 66% since the day of sanctions, further weakening the strength of the US dollar as an international payment asset. I'd like to quickly touch on Ray Dalio's The Changing World Order and the rise and fall of powers. Pre the pandemic and the subsequent money printing, and then the war and the sanctions, we had China snapping on the heels of the US as the economic powerhouse in the world. They had become the biggest producer in the world and had started a period of prosperity, rising sharply into the economic downturn of the US. So what comes next? Revolution and war is next on the chart. And maybe this happens, maybe we have World War III. I'd like to think this wouldn't happen. I'd like to think we're now too powerful and that would spell the end of the world and we're maybe more intelligent as a civilization than we have been in the past, and that may be a naive presumption, but I'd like to suggest an alternative. Deglobalization, which is the process of diminishing independence and integration between certain units around the world, typically nation states. It is widely used to describe periods in history where economic trade and investment between countries decline. Where once the petrodollar reigned supreme, which was basically an agreement between the Middle East and the US to say the US would protect the Middle East so long as they would only trade oil in the dollar, further substantiating the US dollar as the world reserve currency, Saudi Arabia considers accepting the yuan instead of dollars for oil sales. This was back in March. This and the sanctions we talked about really highlights the lack of trust in the US dollar and the need for an alternative payment system. Organisations like the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are gaining popularity around the world, with Iran and Argentina applying to join just yesterday. They're looking for alternative payment networks like Chinese competitors SIPS to SWIFT, and the rise of new payment systems like Ripple's ODL corridor connecting 25 countries. This leads me to the conclusion that